Here we go, everybody. SPS Debo, a little disgruntled right now. Had some bad day testing with the PTR, but we'll go ahead and get into that in a little bit. Basically, I'm bringing to you today is the updated shit on the Melee Zuni Masa. Anything that does not involve Carnival that involves Zuni is pretty much in the classification of Melee. Pretty much, I'm running the Zuni Masa set with the 6-piece. Renho Flailer, and that's just merely because it combos in with the focus and restraint that we are running in the Tasker and Theo. Mostly important, we need to have one spell that we can cast with Toads, one that we can cast that costs mana, so we can trigger both effects and get the increased damage, witching out for also the increased damage of the attack speed and critical damage and all that good stuff. And, I mean, that's pretty much about it. We're sitting at 2.3 million damage, 10.9 million toughness, 59% critical rate, and 512% critical damage. We're going to go ahead and take this into a measly, I would say I've cleared it with this build with 51 before, but that was really lots of fishing. To make me not get a stroke and go crazy, we're just going to go ahead and do it level 47. This will guarantee I don't get bad RNG, and this will make it so that I don't go crazy. The main thing I just wanted to talk about today was that at this current state of the game, I like to keep things pretty much honest with people. The Witch Doctor is not looking too good. And what I mean too good is just that the only viable build that Witch Doctor has right now to actually compete or do anything with is Carnival build, and that's just hands down. Am I mad about that? I'm not necessarily mad about it, and I'm not even really disappointed because I didn't set myself up for failure, because like I said, I set my expectations low when new patches and things come out in this nature. The only thing that I'm finding that is a constant reiterance throughout the Diablo 3 scene right now is the developing something and then going against it and going back and changing things and making it to the point where it's either actually worthless or it's not going to help anybody at all, and it's just completely a waste of time. The major builds that I'm talking about, we can go ahead and talk about for the Season 1. The number one build for Witch Doctor was the Jade build, and the Pet build could actually get pretty close to it with the Tickle and Visage build. Now, with the Jade build, they nerfed the Spirit Walk and then toned it down, and that was understandable because, you know, they didn't want us to stay too immune. But we still had a 0 DPS cooldown build, and I said to myself, as long as we're so relevant and dominant in groups, which we were, we would be perfectly fine, because I understand they can't buff us, because if we're too strong in groups and we're too strong in solo play, then eventually, you know, everybody's just going to simply roll a Witch Doctor. So, at the end of Season 1, everything pretty much carried over. It wasn't too much difference. You know, the 0 DPS build was loved by all. J build was pretty much going okay. And then we built into pretty much Season 2. Now, within Season 2, which was a relatively short season, we still had our Jade build for the most part for that entire season, and we still had the 0 DPS build. When we were going into Season 3, that's at the point they basically nerfed the I think we were getting about 51 with the Jade build, but that required a lot of fishing and a lot of doing the same exact dungeons, and also some power pylons or some conduit pylons playing effect just in a channeling pylon so we can beat the boss in time. And that was okay, I guess, for a time, because we still had a pretty good one for ability for solo. We still had the group dominance. And the biggest thing that now is if you cut to the pre-patch before Season 4, and the current state of Witch Doctor is pretty bad. The 0 DPS build is no more. I understand why they did that, and I totally agree why they did that. Outside of all that, what I don't understand is the constant developing of sets and items that do not do anything to perpetuate or basically help the Witch Doctor in its viability, and it just absolutely is kind of driving me a little bit crazy. Just it seems like there's no effort or no development or towards common sense of what a Witch Doctor actually really needs. The constant implementation of all these different sets for us that just stand and be lackluster for such a long time. I remember the problems with Zuni Masa set being bugged for so long, and you know, all these sets that they spend all this development time, the artwork, the music, the programming, just to get it into the game, and it's just being so lackluster and not actually being fruitful to what basically Blizzard wanted to put in the game and be developed really well and, you know, make things good for the Witch Doctor class. Now, I'm not asking for the Witch Doctor class to be the most overpowered solo power. All I'm asking is for 2 different builds that allow the Witch Doctor to obtain Great Rift level 60. Now, I don't really think that's a lot when you consider how much versatility that we have, but yet, for some reason, it just seems like the inside of development, it's like people are afraid to boost their damage, especially since we pose no threat to being in groups anymore with permanent fear because they took that out of the game. If you look at the sets that we have, Helltooth, which they reworked and re-implemented, but I will give them this, they said they still have time to buff and fix that. That set is very lackluster and has troubles even just pushing up to level 48, maybe up to 50 you could possibly do with a little bit of RNG, maybe 52 if you do a little bit of fishing. The Arctrier set, that's another set that's lackluster. It can probably push up to about 48 to 50, I'd imagine. And even then, it's really lackluster to the point of which it's just, you know, at lower level farming that's fine, but with all the higher level farming, everybody's eventually going to have to go to one build, which we'll get to in one moment. So basically, we have the Helltooth, we have the Arcur set, and we also have the Zunimasa Melee build. That is an okay build, but that build suffers from, you know, not having enough AoE damage and what have you not. The pets do pretty significant damage. So those are just 3 builds off the off the mark, or off the beginning. One is the Helltooth, one is the Archer set, one is the Zunimasa Melee, and also one is the Jade set. If I didn't mention that already, no, I did not. All of those sets, that's 4 different sets with 4 different major builds for Witch Doctor, which is pretty nice because some classes don't have that versatility. You'd figure out of those 4 of those classes, or 4 of those sets and stuff like that, or different builds, that at least one of them would be able to get to the same level as Carnival. Now I'll get to one in a minute why Carnival is just so overall strong and why it's doing so well. The thing that shocks me is that, you know, with the Jade set, it actually has some potential if they just increase the damage. Okay, you're not going to give us back survivability, okay. And now, to be fair, the Archer set and also the, you know, the Helltooth set, they're still working on that, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, at least until they present more evidence that's going to make me worry even more, but I'm not too worried about it, because no matter what they do to Witch Doctor class in general, I'm still going to play it. I'll just have to play the best of what I'm presented with. So those 2 sets, we'll just give it a pass for right now. So we go back and look at the Jade and the Melee Zuni, and the big problem is with Melee Zuni is we don't have any AoE. So since we don't have any AoE, it has a potential to do the damage, but it needs some type of, you know, splash damage. And Jade build has the potential to go higher, it just needs more damage just in general. And with the new combination with the Kanai's Cube, it allows for some cool, interesting combinations, like combining it with the Furnace and a Unity Ring and some, you know, Ring of Royal Grand, or I'm sorry, and then also maybe running the Unity Ring, using the Ring of Royal Grandeur, maybe draw them with the Belt of Transcendence. And overall, I like how the Jade builds develop, but it's really lackluster in damage, and then the survivability is not too bad with the combination of the Kanai's Cube. So with the Jade set, all they have to simply do is just raise the time up, you know, for the creeping deck effect to apply to the Jade set. You know, more damage will just simply fix the problem. I mean, even if we had high octane damage, and, you know, maybe we had to play safe for a certain moments with the Jade build, at least when we do go endure damage, we can get down the monsters that we need to and progress onwards and get some good rift times and get some good things done. But that hasn't really happened, and that makes me a little bit sad, because the Jade set used to be the main staple of the Witch Doctor class, and then basically they took it away. Same thing with the Zuni. Zuni's been through a lot of different iterations, and at one point, even beginning of ROS, the Zuni set was even working half the time. It was conflicting with the Fetish Sycophant's passive. But now the Zunimasa set is okay, but it only really works well with the Carnival build, and I'll get to that, like I said, in one more minute. But the main thing is, if you wanted to run a traditional melee pet doctor build, that build is gone, because you simply can't compete, because there is no AoE damage significant to help your pets boost through mobs. And when you're basically, you have about 23 fetishes on the screen, a small hallway with a lot of monsters is absolutely the worst thing you could possibly get. Even if you spirit walk into the middle of the group, recast your fetish army to get the fetishes next to the monsters they need to do, their damage is not concentrated, and their circumference, or their of what the target they're attacking is very small, and that just ends up being very low DPS. And the scary thing is, like for instance, right now I'm running the build pretty much right now, and as you can see, I have Focus and Restraint, I Grasp for the Dead, the Zunimasa effect, 3.4 million damage. So some of the fetish crit boys to 400 million, which is pretty nice. 278 million, very nice crits. But as you can see right here, if I don't have anything to do AoE damage, you're pretty much crippled. So the reason why the Jade build used to do so well is because it had a form of AoE damage. The reason why the Helltooth and the Arcari set, and most importantly, the Helltooth has a lot of potential because it has the AoE potential inside of it, and it can just deal with a lot of mobs and groups, and it also does very good damage versus the Rift Guardian. So, with that conclusion, The only thing you could really hope to push with any of the two new sets is basically maybe 48 to 50, maybe up to 52 if you fish a little bit. With the existing sets with the Jade build, maybe 52 if you're lucky, but that's really pushing it. And also the same thing with the Melee Zuni build. It really depends on what mobs you get. Can you get a good conduit pylon, and can you get good mob positioning and a good map? And you shouldn't be having to think about necessarily all those situations at such a lower level when another build is basically already pushing 64. So if a Zuni Masa, if the Carnival build's pushing 64, then the other builds should at least be pushing towards 55. I mean, that's not a lot to ask. I mean, you just buff the damage up a little bit. They do close to 55, and people are okay with that. They can accept it. They can be happy. But when you have such a disparity between, you know, maybe 52 if you put in a lot of effort and you get lucky. Let's just say most builds can do 50 very easy. Not necessarily, because you see me doing it on 47, and I'm just barely making the mark. I didn't get any conduit pylons, and we got a lot of small spaces. I just got one right there. And a lot of mobs that just, I don't do a lot of AoE damage, so even with all this damage on the pets, it doesn't matter. But anyways, the reason why, or what we need as witch doctors right now, or just for the sets, is that the Hell 2 just needs to be reworked a little bit, in the sense that to make the gameplay style play a little bit more smoother, so it's not so clunky. That's one of the big things I noticed with the Hell 2 right now. And then also, what they also need to do is just simply up the damage. That's it. Up the damage. It has the AoE potential. It's granted the Rift, you know, gives you the large mob density mobs, but that's not too hard to deal with sometimes. But as long as the Rift has that, then that build can really shine, and it does great damage versus the Elite. So if you up the damage on that and make the playstyle be a little bit more smoother, that would be no problem there. Same thing with the Jade. Jade, you don't even really have to trigger the playstyle too much. You can just up the damage, and that'll be perfectly fine. And then with the Melee pets, I don't know what you would have to do, but you might have to do something with area damage affecting the pets and allowing them to do some type of splash damage if you're expecting any of these builds to push past 52 without basically pure frustration from the people that are playing them. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into the Carnival thing. The reason why Carnival is so good is because of this. Not only does it have AoE, not only does it have high-end damage, it also fishes well, and it also does, well, basically it has survivability, it has good damage, and it has AoE. Now with the new introduction of Kanai Cube, basically you can get your fetishes to improve 100% increased damage where before they would not have that. So that's 100% increased damage, and run a focus and restraint, which is additional 100% increased damage. And I forgot what basically people said. I think it's somewhat multiplicative or something like that, or it does more damage than just 100% increase. But could you imagine? You have a build already that can push Greater Rift level 60, and then Blizzard basically gives you 100% increased pet damage, which improves the damage all across the board. And on top of that, they went ahead and gave you the ability to channel the ability of the SMK, the Big Bad Voodoo, which means another damage boost and attack speed boost. That's more damage and everything like that. And then a Ring of Royal Grandeur, so you can actually run one reduced ring, so that you can run the focus and restraint and get the 100% increased damage. So basically, from the Kanai's Cube alone, it has allowed the Carnival to upgrade its damage to the focus and restraint, which is up to 100% increased damage, the Drum, which is another 100% increased damage for the pets, and then on top of all that, you also got the SMK. So with all those combinations of things and such of that nature, there's no reason, it makes no wonder why the Carnival build's pushing 64 and there's no other viable builds for Witch Doctor, because it has AoE and it has the damage. Now some people say, well, Debo, sometimes you don't get survivability. Here's the big difference. When you cannot do enough damage through, or you don't have enough survivability, right? You can make up for it for pure unadulterated damage. And the way the Carnival build does that is that if they get, like, let's say a minion or a monster that has reflect damage, normally Carnival is going to die a lot. All they have to do is Spirit Walk, be in jaunt for 3 seconds, get off enough volleys, and the damage is so high from all those 23 fetishes shooting darts at the same location and piercing for the AoE damage and having the increased damage from the drums, the focus and restraint, and also the SMK, that it has no problem. There's no issue with it at all, of it actually needing to do its job, which is doing its damage, so that you can go ahead and get down the target that you need. So even if you get into certain situations, as long as you have good mob density, and as long as you Spirit Walk at the correct times, and you stay far back between also the stun effect of the Carnival, you will have no problem whatsoever surviving in the environment. So it allows you to do your damage in the form of massive amounts of AoE and just having massive amounts of damage just from the changes that they made to the game structure. So the main reason why everybody's going to Carnival build, because it has the big three things. It has the AoE, it has the damage, and it has the way to deal with survivability. It has a way to survive. whether you survive by just mitigating that damage or simply killing everything before it kills you are both good viable ways to have survivability. So, I mean, I really hope that Blizzard does a little bit better. I don't want to come down too hard on developers because I don't know how it is from their perspective or their point of view or how they handle things. But from a player standpoint, and me playing a Diablo for such a long time that I did, it's setting off really big red flags for me for right now for the for the Witch Doctor. At this point, if they do not get it right, you're going to have to write out the entire season 4 with the only viable build that might get any type of play, which is the Carnival build. Now, some people may not care about that, but I'm just telling you, for the sake of diversity and keeping people interested in the game and the sake of just basically not diminishing the development of these sets. Think about it. They developed Jade, right? They developed Hell 2, a Crier's set, right? They also had Melee pet build that used to be very popular. All these builds are very popular. There's 4 different types of builds, and they're all obsolete in comparison to the Carnival build. What was the point of developing those sets if no one's using them right now? Is, I guess, the whole point I'm trying to say. And the easy way to fix it is just make sure that, 1, these builds have good AoE. 2, they have some form of survivability. 3, they have the high damage. Where one lacks, the others have to pick up the slack. So this male build may not have high damage, but it has a lot of AoE, just like how the Jade build is. So it might get slowed down a little bit when you get to the Rift Guardian, but that's okay. That's just part of how it works, you know? One build might have a lot of survivability and a lot of damage, but it doesn't have any AoE. So, you know, it just, hopefully you just buff the damage to the point where it makes up for the lack of what its weaknesses in. Or you just buff what it really needs. So I guess, you know, just so I don't make this go on too long and just keep the video straight and short to the point, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the Melee Zuni build. I'm actually able to get up to 51. If I can download it off of Twitch, I'll upload it eventually so you guys can see that Rumdale's a lot of luck in that involved. I'm just saying, for the amount of effort that I have to put in just to get these builds just to somewhat work, the frustrating thing is that Carnival just blends so well. Now, we had a long time as a 0 DPS Kings, and Kings were being inside the groups for about 3 seasons, so I understand why they had to nerf it. But in the current state of what's going on, if Blizzard doesn't do anything about what's going to happen in the Witch Doctor class, I don't think it's going to actually ever die, but a lot of people are not going to be playing that. A lot of people are going to be playing the monks and the DHs and other classes because they just do everything that we don't do. Maybe they might want us to sit out for a whole season. I have no idea. And maybe it's too early in the PTR to really just start, you know, worrying about this kind of stuff. But it just sets off red flags. The ultimate thing is, I don't think Witch Doctors need to be the best class in game. I don't think they need to be dependent in groups. I just would like to say, okay, if you were not going to be used in groups that much, I'd like to see maybe Carnival get to 65, 66 just. That'd be great. 65, I think, is the new mark, would be okay. If you have to fish a little bit for 65, that's okay. That means Carnival builds shouldn't need to fish too much at level 60. Which means you shouldn't have to go spam through paying dungeons. And then maybe the next build, the Helltooth, if Helltooth can do 55 and maybe fish upwards to 60, that'd be fine. I don't expect for the Helltooth to be the best build. Or you can do it with the Crier set, or you can do it with the Melee Pet build. Any of those builds, just 2 builds out of the 5 different builds that Witch Doctor's been using for a while or have potential to use, at least let 2 of them be viable. To have, you know, now if you want to have a passing grade, you know, you want 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, but I mean, at least 2. Right now we have 1. And you know what? It's just with the Greater Rift system and the fishing and how everything's so crazy and so random based, whether or not you get a conduit shrine, the channeling pylon, or whatever, it's starting to create like a lot of, well, at least for me, it's just not enjoyable, you know. But that's just my opinion. Maybe it doesn't matter. But like I said, I'm just putting this out there. I'm just letting you guys know what's the honest opinion, so you guys don't come on the PTR, you wait for 5 to 10 hours just to get a damn game, you guys log in. I'm just trying to get all this information out so you guys don't have to. If you wanted the too long don't listen discussion, this whole video is basically trying to sum up as we're closing into the 20-minute mark. Witch Doctors are pretty shit right now. We lost all group viability with the 0 DPS. We can't say that the towel is thrown in yet because we still have 2 new sets, and Blizzard says their intention is to buff them very high, which I hope they do, which would be fantastic. With the Carnival build, that'd be more than enough. I'm not asking, or I'm not even thinking that we need to be the best class in game. I don't think it's much to ask for 2 builds that can do 55 to 60 pretty decently, and then one of those builds that can maybe fish up to 65. If you're looking for it, if you basically ask me right now in the current state of how the Witch Doctor is, you either go Carnival or you go nothing else. And if you don't want to play Carnival, then you need to play another class. Outside of all that, I showed you guys what the setup I was running with the melee. Hopefully they can look into maybe making area damage affect pets so they can cleave. That would help out a lot. That would be an easy fix, and you can adjust the numbers however you guys did it, and that can probably push this build to 55, 56, maybe even go up to 60. And I know some people would appreciate it because people get tired of running the same build over and over again. But if you give them 2.5, then people won't be so frustrated. But people are going to burn out in seasons when the only build they can go is Carnival. They get all the gear that they want, and then they get to a point where they can't make the gear any better. They don't have any other specs to play, and they just simply just say, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to spam Greater Rifts until I get what I want. But then again, there are also always other classes you could play. Those are my 2 cents. Feel a lot better that I got all that off my chest, because let me tell you, it was a shitty testing day with Melee Zunimasa. The only thing I have left to test is, surprise, surprise, Carnival, because I saved the best for last, because I knew that worked. So I'm probably going to have a good time with that for the next couple days, I hope. Hopefully I don't get too much bad in the Greater Rifts, and I don't get shitty fishing, because that would also make for a horrible experience. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I got that guide coming along. I'm typing up everything inside the form I got set up. I want to make it a nice big guide that just breaks down everything in the PTR, so look forward to that. But you guys got another Carnival video coming out probably tomorrow. And then the next day, probably I'll do Kanai Cube and do a lot of the little side stuff that seems pretty cool. And do a video that talks about the changes to the certain Witch Doctor stuff. So as always, I appreciate you guys watching the video. Thanks for listening to me rant a little bit. I feel a lot better. I'm not so about to rage and throw my computer out the window due to the shitty Greater Rifts I got. Also, if anybody out there, if you're listening, Blizzard, just because you think replayability comes from RNG, that is not. It just no. You just need to stop. Look back into the way you guys do Greater Rift systems. Well, with that, that's all I got to say. I hope you guys have a good day, and I hope you do well. I'm Debo, and I'm out.